So for me, yeah, it was just taking a Porsche and just kind of applying some of those techniques and kind of, methods that I learned from my family and just using a little different vehicle. And
well, what's the genesis of this? I mean, obviously, this is now a 25-year-old car. It doesn't look like it at all, but it's got a great story, and you actually practically you use this for how many, 5,000-mile drive?
So the original nose of the car is actually on the rear of the car, which kind of lengthened the tail of the car, which gives it a little bit more of a, a little rounded. Yeah. And then built into the back a trailer hitch, and then restored a little aluminum German Ariba Puch trailer. And my son was a month old. I was, newly married, about 3 years into a marriage.
Hey, welcome to Car Guy Confessions, brought to you by ARP. I'm Jeff Smith. This is my car buddy Cam Benty and car builder Steve Strope, and we're going to tell you some stories.
Welcome to another episode of Car Guy Confessions, this time without Jeff Smith. Love Jeff. Jeff is a little busy right now. He's probably pouring a driveway the last time I saw his shop.
He's on vacation.
He's on vacation. Fine. He's never on vacation. He was talking about not ever being retired. He's just, but anyway,
there's a goal.
Absolutely. So anyway, sponsored by ARP-bolts, ARP bolts, fasteners, everything you can think of. Buddies of ours, Bob Florine and the whole team over there. They're really good guys to us. The reason we're here is because of them. So that's a very cool thing.
So buy some bolts.
And we're also
or nuts
at the Petersen Museum. As you look in the surroundings, and a very important thing here, we've got Rod Emory Motorsports. Rod is the maker of this particular vehicle. I didn't even mention my gentleman here, Steve Strope.
I'm
Steve.
And I've done some things.
Critical part of this whole operation. But anyway, so part of the reason we came to this particular spot is because of that car and this guy. So Rod is an amazing, he's got an amazing shop, amazing family. Your family's all working with you every day, correct? Yep. So they're all on the shop.
4 generations deep.
There you go. That's right. That's true. That's right. I wrote a story for him for a classic car, all about Rod and the stuff he does, because the cars are beautiful. He builds a number of cars, and his shop's in North Hollywood?
I'm in North Hollywood.
North Hollywood, so not very far away, and not very far from where your father's shop was originally.
My
grandfather's shop.
Yeah.
Okay.
So back in the 40s and 50s, Valley Custom Shop.
There you go. So custom cool stuff.
Now I'm going to interject because now that Cam's given you all the polite versions, what the man does is really amazing, yet something that I look for, I demand of myself in designing and building, and I look for when I'm walking around a car show, regardless of the branding, is tasteful, subtle, blending new with old, intelligent interjection of design, whether it be performance or aesthetic. And he kind of has cornered what they call the outlaw, right, in the Porsche world, which I found lightly humorous when that was starting. Little background on me, not Porsche owner, but I used to road race a Carmen Ghia.
Okay.
And I loved that car. I was born and raised in a very small farm town in upstate New York, and I would be bombing through the back roads in this thing.
He would race around the mall.
I had a racetrack set up around the mall near me. Literally.
Yeah.
I'd go there at 3 a.m. and have at it with racing shoes and gloves and helmet on.
And no tread.
I had my own. No, yeah, it shaved Yokohamas on it.
Yep.
That thing was, the little Volksies can be made very fast and very quick. I had a very fast and very quick one. But anyway, so being someone who's, made his living building hot rods and muscle cars and stuff like that, it was so interesting to watch. I know you've been doing this for a long time, but my introduction to you, as far as knowing of your existence and what you were doing, wasn't too long ago. And it was not parallel with, but around the time I started seeing Magnus Walker stuff.
Yep.
And up until that point, it had seemed that the Porsche community was rather uptight. And you guys, both in your own way, came in and really made it this is my observance from the outside. You made it hip to be square. You made it cool to cut it up and modify it and play with it, and went against the grain. And of course, now I just love it. You must love it. Everyone's on your side now. Where before they were like, "What are you doing to our precious cars?" And now they're the same guys going, "I'll write you a big check. Give me one of your cool cars." Which
Was that the case? Did you have a lot of resistance?
did you have
initially?
that? Well, because that's what I heard. That's what I was catching.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back, a little over 3 decades. I built my first car when I was in high school. I started on it in 1988, finished it in 1990, and I took one of the most kind of precious early Porsches, which was a 53 bent window coupe, so what they call a Prie, and I backdated it, making it look a little bit more like one of the old Le Mans race cars. So I split the windshield and put fog lights in the,
You made a hot rod.
Pushed fog lights in the front. I put body bumpers on it, split the windshield, put louvers in the back, and my deck lid flipped over. Got rid of the hubcaps, polished the drums, lowered it.
Sure.
So I was 16 years old, and I had this little hot rod 356 that I was turning into a vintage race car / fun kind of street car. My dad was in the Porsche parts business, so he's selling Porsche parts to all these guys that are full Concours purists,
Sure.
Picking lint out of their air cleaners and making sure that, everything's even better than the car was originally. And here his 16-year-old kid in the back of his shop is slamming the thing and
Right.
making sparks when it goes over, goes across the asphalt. So all of his buddies were like, "Oh man, it's sacrilegious. You can't cut up a Porsche." So we made this little, actually Freeman Thomas, the designer Freeman's brother-in-law is a jeweler in Tustin, and he made this little badge for me on the back that said, for the back deck lid of my car, that said 356 Outlaws. And
Perfect.
it was really about, so that was 1989, 1990, because the problem is that there weren't any events that accepted a hot rodded
Right.
out modified Porsche at the time.
I bet.
In fact,
Right.
when I got the car done, go to a Porsche event, and if it wasn't, full Concours or a street original car, you parked out in the dirt. And that's kind of the way it was for years. But I built my first car as a race car, and so going to all the vintage races, that was really, for me, I grew up wanting to race. And so I did all the, vintage race stuff, Vara and Sovereign and CSRG and all these different race organizations. So they accepted me, but the Porsche community as a whole really didn't. But just kind of kept doing my thing, building race cars, building like the car right behind us.
Yes.
Did this car in 1998. It really wasn't until about, say, 2005 to 2010, kind of in that period of time, that I think the appetite for the Porsche consumer was changing. And a lot of the older, real traditional guys were starting to fade out a little bit. And some of the younger guys were coming in that are used to driving, a 300 horsepower car with power steering.
Right.
And they're like, why would I want to drive a 356? It drives like an old tractor.
Yes.
And so when they recognize that my cars all of a sudden look cool and, they're modified, but they drive better, then it's like that's when things kind of switched. And, stock cars were, still kind of about the same, but then all of the modified stuff, or what we call outlaw now, started, becoming more desirable, which, demand is high, but volume is low,
Right.
and so the prices started going up. I mean, now my cars are worth 4 or 5 times, sometimes 10 times what a stock original car is.
Well, and justifiably so. I mean, what I love about these cars and what Steve is talking about is the 356, in my estimation, people are going to shoot me for this, is not necessarily a great looking car to me. It isn't one of the cars I had ever aspired to. I like 911s, I like a lot of the other cars. 356 wasn't me. But this is the way I love it. I mean, that sounds like I'm sucking up, but I got to tell you, this is such a good-looking car. They should have made them like this in the beginning. If they had, I mean, obviously at different times, different eras, different things going on, equipment and whatever. This is a Porsche done right.
Well, he designed the ugly out of it.
He did. He did.
I,
Nice job.
I grew up in a family of hot rodders, right? My grandfather Neil Emery, that had Valley Custom Shop, and he was, kind of the little background on him. Right after the war, he and his brother-in-law Clayton Jensen started a shop right here in Burbank, and one of their first projects they did was for SoCal Speed Shop. They took the belly tanker did all the louvers, built the headrest for it. And so a lot of early hot rod stuff they were doing. So they did all the metalwork on the belly tanker that Bruce Meyer has. And then
that's the one. That's the one he has.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was gold, and it was gold at the time. So the first version of the SoCal Streamliner was gold. Then Dean Batchelor, who everybody knows.
Dean. Yeah, no,
so,
Dean, good guy.
So Dean was my grandfather's best man in their wedding. So they were best friends. And wow. Dean came back from Europe because Dean was really into European styling. He loved the European styling of cars. He came back from Europe, kind of napkin sketched an envelope-bodied Streamliner and said to my grandfather, he said, this was about 48, 49. He said, you know what, I think we can go over 200 miles an hour, but we've got to close in the wheels and yada, yada. So my grandfather and Alex Exidius and Dean got together and built the SoCal Streamliner, which is the first, it was that envelope-bodied car. Yep. To build it, they actually took the.
By the way, we'll put photos of these
yeah.
up on screen so people know what's going on. For the YouTube folks, the audio guys, you're stuck.
So to build it, they took the belly tanker body off the belly tanker.
Yeah.
Put the body up in the rafters and used that chassis and flathead running gear from the SoCal belly tanker and built the SoCal Streamliner. So in 1950, it was the first hot rod over 200 miles an hour. Did a few more races with it, and then they totaled it. So after that, they took the belly tanker body, brought it back down, built a new chassis for it. And so Bruce's belly tanker is the original body, but it's a newer, updated chassis.
Okay.
So my grandfather was building all the, doing all the early, Lakes cars, and also, like on the wall over here, you see the 29 track nose Roadster that was on the cover of Hot Rod magazine in 1950. That was a car called the Dick Flint Roadster. Mm-hmm. So my grandfather built that in 1950, and then a lot of the cars after that he was really one of the pioneers of channeling and sectioning. So cars like the Gillette 40 was channeled, fenders raised, hood was pancaked. The Ina May's, there was the Polynesian, which is a real famous real famous custom Oldsmobile. He sectioned that 5 inches, right? So basically, when you section a car, you don't just take it right out of the center. I mean, you're really kind of zigzagging it, taking kind of the high point all the way down the body.
Yeah. So I'm familiar.
So he was really the, he didn't chop much.
Sure.
His technique in the 40s and 50s was a lot of sectioning and a lot of channeling. And so that was really his trajectory in the 40s, 50s. And then, when custom car building started to phase out at the end of the 50s, and it was a little bit more, kind of lowrider stuff and crazy paint jobs, and the cars were changing. Mm-hmm. He was like, maybe this isn't the, maybe I don't want to be a small business owner anymore. And Chick Iverson, that owned a little car lot in the Valley, had just bought the Porsche VW dealership in Newport Beach, and then talked my grandfather into moving in '61 to the beach. And so my grandfather ran the body shop at Chick Iverson Volkswagen Porsche. And then my dad, he graduated from Poly in '61, and then went and moved down there and then became the parts manager. So grandfather runs the body shop. My dad ran the parts business for Chick Iverson. So I grew up in that environment. And, so always hanging out with my grandfather, kind of learning, he loved making cars look a little bit more European or thinner, smoother. You look at cars of the 40s, 30s and 40s, 36 Ford, 40 Ford, they're big and thick in the body. But you look at the 50s, everything started to thin out. And I would say that there was, all those car manufacturers at the time were watching what my grandfather was doing, what Barris and what, all the early customizers were doing by kind of, thinning the cars out. If you look at what became of the Thunderbird and the Mustang and the Camaro and, the cars of the 60s.
You bet. Absolutely. Yeah, you do a lot of the sectioning and cutting and thinning and narrowing.
We ruin things. Yeah.
You're all over the place. I mean,
we have cut some things.
Yes, you have, and
here and there,
and beautifully, I may say. But very very much some awesome stuff there. But
so we'd like to thank our sponsor ARP and ARP-bolts.com. And we all three build cars. We all work on this stuff. And
I tinker.
You tinker.
I tinker.
Yes, we all build.
Yeah, and you know what? It's kind of a really cool multiple purpose fastener for me because there's all the science and all the technology, which is bottomless. Trust me. Unbelievable amount of research that they put into these things.
Absolutely.
And on top of it, you get them out of the package, and they're absolutely beautiful. Which I've joked before, it's like jewelry for your car. And when we're building when we're building a high end car, there isn't anything else going on it. It's part of the criteria for me to have them lining the engine bay, not just on the engine, everywhere.
Yeah.
So you get all the strength, the durability, the reliability, and fantastic good looks.
Sure.
Kind of like Jeff here.
And without peer. Without peer.
And you know what?
Or pairs.
Without peer, there's nobody else that does what they do.
It is. So check them out at arp-bolts.com, and they can help you out.
So for me, it was just taking a Porsche and just kind of applying some of those techniques and kind of, methods that I learned from my family and just using a little different vehicle. And
well, what's the genesis of this? I mean, obviously, this is now a 25-year-old car. It doesn't look like it at all, but it's got a great story. And you actually practically you use this for how many, like 5,000-mile drive?
Yeah. So kind of a fun little story, really, because it was. There's a lot to it.
It's called the Emory Special.
It's the first car I called the Emory Special.
Creative name. There you go.
So one of the guys that worked for my grandfather, that right at the very end of Valley Custom Shop, he had this body. It was up in Oregon. So I had started my business in Oregon in the early '90s, and this body was up in Oregon, and this guy Carl Morton had it, and it was super rusty. And so I got the car from him and decided that I wanted to kind of make a 356 a little bit more like a custom car. So took a rusty Cabriolet and gave it a little bit more styling like this 550 Spider or RSK type, cut some of the race cars. So I leaned the nose back, leaned the windshield back, rolled the rockers under. So you can't really it's a unibody car. So, you can't really section the body like you can, an American car. And so I wanted to make the car look thinner, so I rolled the rockers under. So instead of the rocker coming straight down like a 356 would, I rolled it under. I started about, 3/4 of the way down the door and then rolled that under. So that's what gave the car, kind of a full belly panned and rolled look, which makes it look thinner in the body. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to make custom glass for it, so I leaned the windshield back, but didn't chop it. And then when I did that, I lowered
the A-pillars leaned back.
Yeah. So I just leaned.
How far back did you lean that? Because it looks
15
like
degrees.
I was going to say it looks like a mail slot.
Yeah.
So.
But I also leaned the headlights back. The whole nose basically got leaned back.
Yeah. So
and
everything looks fast while it's sitting still.
Yeah.
Everything's a cartoon drawing of whoosh.
And then the cowl, like right at the backside of the hood, I also dropped the cowl. So lean the nose back, which leaned the headlights back, and then lowered the cowl and then flattened the hood. So normally the hood has a big hump for the spare tire. So I flattened the hood and then leaned the windshield back. But when I did the car, the nose was kind of wasted on it, so the headlight areas were gone, so I knew I had to put a whole new nose on it. But the center section of the nose was still good. So I took that and then brought it around to the rear. So the original nose of the car is actually on the rear of the car, which kind of lengthened the tail of the car, which gives it a little bit more of a, little rounded.
More overhang off the back.
And then built into the back a trailer hitch, and then restored a little aluminum German Ariba Puch trailer. Yeah. And my son was a month old. I was, newly married, about 3 years into a marriage. Yeah. 3 years into a marriage in '98, and Porsche was having their 50th anniversary, big event. So we just celebrated at Rennsport Reunion a couple of weeks ago, which was the biggest Porsche event in history.
Right,
but
it was huge.
But 25 years ago at Laguna Seca was Porsche's 50th anniversary. So I figured, you know what, I'm going to show up with something wacky, and so everybody else has their all stock original cars or race cars, and I come pulling up in this thing that sounds like a Harley because the engine in it was originally a 6-cylinder that we whacked the center 2 cylinders and welded it back together and made a 4-cylinder out of it.
And that's what you do. You build those today, correct?
I do.
That is your kind of go-to engine, is it not? So,
well, the original engine in a 356 was a single camshaft pushrod wet sump engine. Right. So modern Porsches or Porsches of the 90s, the end of the air-cooled stuff was, twin plug, dry sump, just a much better 6-cylinder engine. But a 6-cylinder is just too big to fit in these little 1,800-pound cars. So take the 6-cylinder architecture, turn it into a 4, made it to a good transmission, big brakes, and you got a little rocket. I mean,
But you
1,900 pound.
You cast all those. So when you buy an Emory Motorsports car,
Yeah.
most of the motors are of that type. I mean, I did see some twin turbo ones in there that were
Yeah, but it's still
pretty
it's
crazy.
still the same engine.
Still the same engine.
Yeah.
but more juice. But anyway, so that motor, I mean, it's like a piece of jewelry the way he's got it done. It's really quite amazing. And your guy Chris up in is in Oregon.
In Oregon, yeah.
Okay, so he does all your motors and such.
Yeah, so Chris has worked for me, since '98 and does a lot of my design stuff. And he started out as my media guy, doing all the stuff when I was racing GT3s and doing all my magazine stuff back in the day when magazines were a thing, and then he evolved into doing all my digital design stuff. And so about 12 years ago, I went down the path of doing a new engine, which is what we put in all the cars now. So we reverse engineered the 964 engine, so the 90s era, the end of the air-cooled case,
Sure.
which is a 6-cylinder, horizontally opposed kind of boxer engine.
Right.
And we basically just eliminated the center 2 cylinders. And then I have a foundry up in the Bay Area that casts the cases for me. And then we X-ray them before we machine them to make sure there's no porosity. And so Chris heads up the kind of engine program for me.
Okay.
My whole business was in Oregon for 20 years, and so a lot of my infrastructure is still up there, even though the workshop's here. But yeah, we build all the engines for the cars in partnership with Rothsport, which is a Porsche engine builder.
Was that prior to, because I met you originally through Art Thompson?
Yep.
And Art, you had a shop there for a while. Was that before Oregon or after Oregon?
That was after Oregon.
So that was after Oregon.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my stint in Lancaster with Art was I needed some aerospace technology in like 2010, 11 when I was restoring Porsche's first race car and the Porsche that won Le Mans.
Nice.
So I needed to do a lot of 3D scanning and large format machining. So
Is that the one that was at your shop when I went by your shop? Okay.
yeah.
Fair
So when we met back then, I was renting space from Sage Cheshire Aerospace, which
Right.
they were Art Thompson has been a good friend for many, many years, but he was one of the lead guys on the B2 program, and then did all of the
Space jump, the Stratus jump.
yeah. Well, prior to that, he was doing all the Mini Cooper Red Bull cars.
Yeah.
And all the DJ stands. So he kind of combined his aerospace stuff with Northrop and his Red Bull stuff. And when they were wanting to do the space jump, he put the bid in and got the bid to do the Felix Baumgartner capsule. So when I was restoring the 356 SL, the Le Mans car, I was using his gantry mill and all of his scanners, and I was in the same room. So here 2011 to 12,
Right.
we're building the capsule for Red Bull.
This is the Stratus jump from 118.
128,000 feet.
Is that the one Jason was involved
Yeah,
with?
Jason.
exactly.
Yeah, Jason.
Yeah.
Lewis, yeah.
Yeah, Jason, good guy.
Yep.
Jason was the
Small world.
He was the spacesuit guy.
I just saw Jason last week. Yeah. So
Did you?
Jason. Yeah. So
Yes.
Jason. Yeah. He was the test dummy or the monkey
He was
for the
He was.
spacesuit.
Yes.
So I worked with Jason up there. I was restoring the SL body at Sage Cheshire at the same time the capsule was being built, because it was just shared technology and kind of crazy. I'm restoring a 70-year-old aluminum race car, and they're building something to go to space.
Hey, we'd like to thank our sponsor, ARP-bolts.com. We got a fantastic little backdrop here. They make an outstanding series of bolts, almost anything you would need for engines, chassis, things like that. In fact, we were at lunch today, and a guy asked you about the bolt on the back of your shirt, and and I said, well, it's really about a head bolt. They neck the stem down of the bolt on a small block Chevy head bolt, so the clamp load is even across 3 different head bolt lengths on a small block Chevy. And, so that's the kind of technology that you get out of ARP. And we've all got stories on all that stuff.
For a translation of what he said, call ARPbolts.com.
But the message is that you can't get any better than that.
No, you cannot.
There you go.
Nope.
Excellent.
And then just check them out at ARP-bolts.com. We'd like to thank our friends at inthegaragemedia.com. They have 3 fantastic magazines. They've got Classic Truck Performance, they have Modern Rotting, and my favorite, All Chevy Performance with Nick, my buddy Nick,
Oh,
is
you're
the
so
editor.
biased.
So, yes, of course. Yes. But they're doing print media, which is, of course, our favorite. So,
In color and
magazine.
everything.
in color and everything, and you can get your car on the cover of one of those books, which is a fun
that's a
deal.
lot.
Great tech.
Great
Written
tech.
by you
know,
and others
not always
that are
written by me, but
famous
yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Not always written by me.
That's right.
Just
So
pick it
check
up and
them
read
out
it.
at inthegaragemedia.com, and they're our friends, and they will thank you.
Jason and I have had a lot of fun together.
Super nice guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent guy.
Super nice guy.
Yeah. Yes, he is indeed. So anyway, so finish. We should finish the Emory special that I interrupted you as So you built this car.
Yeah.
You took your 1-year-old son. You built a car seat that is still visible here at the Petersen Museum, and with your trailer, and you took a tour. Where did you go?
So yeah, we finished the car, 3 minutes before the event started, and was still working on it as we
know
drove.
something about that, right?
Yeah, I know, yeah.
As we drove to Monterey, I
That's
think
right.
I was.
We
I
can
think,
just turn this off, and me and you can talk.
I think
for
I was
8
5
hours about that
days, no
nonsense.
sleep, and then convinced my wife to let me go ahead and drive it, towing the trailer from Oregon to Monterey, and
Boy,
anyway, so we finally
That was
get
just the first leg.
yeah, so we get to Monterey, we camped, we parked our little trailer up in the campground area and enjoyed Porsche's 50th anniversary.
Yeah.
And then after that, it was our opportunity to kind of tour the Western United States and introduce our little baby to all of our family. So we went from there down to went and saw my grandfather and my uncle down in Fallbrook. Because my grandfather, after he retired from Chick Iverson, he and my uncle started Emory's Porsche Restoration in Fallbrook. So we went to Fallbrook, spent some time there, then drove kind of straight up 395, went and saw my sister in Bishop, went to Reno, then kind of came back through Death Valley, went to Vegas, all through Utah, Idaho. So we did this big 5,000-mile loop.
Hardy little car.
Driving the car. Yeah, so, right out of the box, engine, transmission, car, trailer restoration, everything, but I was 23 years old and naive and figured, whatever. So
I love hearing other people dumb enough to do this.
Stupid. But it made me realize that I can actually build something that, lasts, right? Yeah. So we finally get to Cedar City, Utah. I got a small little oil leak. No problem. Went to the local Napa auto parts store and got a fitting and some hose clamps, and because one of the crimps was not good on the one of the secondary oil pumps on the car. So all that's good. One little oil leak and 3,000 miles. The only thing is, me being a custom car builder, and I'm like, I don't want windshield wipers on this thing.
I was going to say,
who needs windshield
air conditioning, or at least a heater?
Who needs windshield wipers, right?
Well, that's what they
Spoken
have
by a
Rain-X
California.
for.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
Who needs windshield wipers? So we're leaving Cedar City, Utah. It's August, and we're heading up into Salt Lake, and it's just dumping buckets, So we pull over, go to the auto parts store, drill a hole, got a windshield wiper, got a hand crank, and Amy just sat there and cranked.
Oh, man.
And we kept going. But that was just kind of part of the deal. The one thing I left out, which was cool, when we were passing through Death Valley, imagine, I've got this young wife, she's 21 years old, and we've got a 1-month-old baby, and we're headed out on this 5,000-mile trip, no air conditioning, right?
No.
August.
Yeah.
So she says,
Well planned.
yeah. So she says, Rod, she goes, I love everything about this, but she goes, I don't want to be on the front page of the newspaper because our baby is
Cooked.
cooked from heat exhaustion. So I'm like, oh man, what am I going to do? So it was like 6 hours before we were getting ready to leave. So I'm like, I got to come up with something. So went and got a little ice chest, got a little 12-volt fan, made up a little plug for the 12-volt plug, did a quick louver on this little panel and riveted it to the side of the ice chest. And every 3 hours, we'd just stop, grab a block of ice, throw it in the back, and in the passenger seat in the rear. So his seat, you can't do this now, but now it has to be rear facing.
Yes.
But his seat sat kind of sideways so that she could lean the seat back and tend to him and breastfeed and all that stuff while we're driving. But then in the passenger rear seat, we just had a little ice chest, and it would just blow cold air on him. So That kid was
And
happy
since
as can
there's
be.
not a lot of greenhouse in there. It
Exactly.
probably helped cool the car
Yeah.
too.
So 5,000 miles, 15 blocks of ice, and we were, we were good.
But that's an amazing story. I mean, how much fun is that? And your son works with you every day, hammering away.
Does he let you forget the torture you put him through?
He loves it. He loves it. So yeah, he's back in the assembly area of our shop.
That's right.
So he does. He's super detail oriented. 25 years old now.
Your daughter works.
So is it trippy looking at that car and talking about it now that tomorrow you'll go to work with him and he's 25 years old?
Yeah, it is.
Working
It's-
in the back. And last night behind me was the car
Because
you
it
were
just-
being hauled around in with a piece of ice and a cooler.
The problem is 25 years.
Yeah, I
went by
know.
that quick.
I know it's like that. But that's what I'm saying, how
Yeah.
trippy that is.
I know.
Because you turn around and look at that thing and
Yep.
go, that was not 25 years
Well,
ago.
and
That was,
the car's never left us. It's pretty much
Good
stayed
for
the
you.
same. We drive the crap out of it, but it still looks the same. It's got rock chips and scratches, but
Did you fill the
it's,
wiper hole?
Yeah.
I looked for it when you said that. I'm like, I don't see no hole.
So
Be quick work of that when you got back
no,
home. Fill it all.
it's right above the mirror in the windshield.
Oh, it's in the windshield.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I
there.
see it.
There
Yeah.
you go.
So there's a
It
little
is there.
there's a little rubber plug. Yep.
that's very
Yep.
funny.
So she sat
Let
there
me,
with
let me get this right. You were on the road and you drilled a hole in the windshield.
We did, yeah, and then we had, and then what
This
we
is
did
a
we,
gutsy
we got
man
we got
right
a we got
about
a
here.
wiper we got a wiper arm and a Ford window crank.
Yeah.
Did
So
you, did you
a
have to
window
go
crank.
buy a glass drill bit?
Had to buy a glass
I was
drill
gonna
bit.
say, I know better.
And then I used an old
You are
Ford,
insane.
a little Ford,
like it.
you know,
Yeah, with the
crank,
cranker,
and
sure.
she just sat there and went like that, and because
that's
it
very
it was just dumping buckets
That's
from
a
Salt Lake
patient woman.
from Salt Lake
Wow.
all the way back to Portland. But
Wow.
And so
Yeah.
your son is in the assembly room.
yeah.
Your daughter works in parts.
So yeah, so my kids
Your daughter-
never my kids never were
son's
forced
name
to
is Zach?
Zane.
Zane.
My
Zane.
daughter's name's Jade.
Jade.
Yeah.
All right.
And-
sorry.
Oh yeah, we're not. Yeah. We need to tie our hands.
Okay.
So
and your wife
so
is also
I'm
she's
the
in the accounting
tab
department.
nuts.
is
she
that-
is. Yeah. So
Okay.
I never.
What's your wife's name?
Amy.
Amy.
So
Amy's in
we
the what?
never really pushed the kids to be involved in the business. I didn't ever want to like make them feel like it was something they needed to do. Zane, my son, raced up or grew up racing go-karts, natural.
Of course.
And then when he was 8 years old, he's like, Dad, I don't want to be a race car driver. And I'm like, oh, you're retiring from racing at
Sorry
8?
to hear that.
Sorry, we got go-karts and quarter midgets and enclosed trailers. He says, he goes, I want to sing and act. And I'm like, we live in Oregon. We're in McMinnville, Oregon, out in the farm.
Oh, I know where that is.
Yeah.
Sure.
So-
Okay. All
A
right.
lot of acting going on.
Yeah.
there.
That's a lot of it.
So he
By
does
what
filming
does
opportunities.
some local theater, and then meets this agent down here. Next thing you know, he's on a Disney show, and he's was on Criminal Minds and Ghost Whisperer, and he's full time acting
Oh,
at
he's good
10
looking.
years
Wow.
old, right?
Yeah, good looking kid.
So from 2010 to 2012, when I was doing a little bit of work at Art Thompson's place,
Yeah.
my wife and kids were in Burbank, and I was still, either in Lancaster or up in Oregon. So 2012, we packed up the shop and moved it back to the Valley because Zane was clearly on a trajectory of, kind of full-time career. So he did 8 years on the show Goldbergs, and then which is a sitcom, and then
Okay.
a couple of
He
years
was
on.
one of the main characters.
Yep,
Oh,
and then
very
a
cool.
couple of years on another ABC show, The Rookie. So he's been a full-time actor since he was 10 years old,
Yeah.
but he's always worked in the workshop. Well, 2020 happens and the acting world changes. Actor strikes, and Zane's like, you know what? He goes, I think I just want to follow my passion of building cars. So he's been full-time back in the workshop. At the same time, my daughter was going to college in Vegas. So she grew up doing aerial acrobatics, so like trapeze and silk. And then, so thought Vegas was kind of her trajectory, being on a Cirque show. Went to UNLV, was planning to be a physical therapist. And then after school said, Dad, I want to be on the business side. So the last 2 years, my daughter runs the project management, does all my ordering. I mean, both kids worked in the shop all summer long
Sure.
while they were going
Right.
to school at the racetrack. So they know the cars inside and out. But I never knew that my family would want to,
Sure.
my kids would want to be in the business with me. So yeah, 2 years ago,
That's terrific.
Jade took over the office, working with my wife.
Right. Does she do it by trampoline? Does she?
She does. She could. She could do it. She can do. She can climb a rope.
Perfect.
Hand over hand all the way to the ceiling. But anyway, so my wife and daughter run the office and Zane runs the. He's kind of oversees all the kind of final delivery of the cars, all the like restoration type stuff that we do.
Nice.
And then Jade, my daughter, she married one of my main metal shaping guys who happened to be Zane's best friend. And so yeah, it's kind of a family affair.
I would say that's quite the story. I think
Everybody's
that's
there.
another sitcom there.
Yeah.
Not really a
So-
com. That's more dramatic, I think.
Yeah.
More exciting.
So yeah, it's a family business, but yeah, really 4 generations deep because the love and passion of custom cars and car building goes all the way back to the 40s for my grandfather, and we're just carrying on the tradition. It's not a legacy business in that we didn't take over a business, but the passion, the work ethic, the skills, all of that has carried on now 4 generations.
That's tremendous.
Yeah.
No, you can see it. And what's very cool is if you walk into his shop, I mean, it does give the impression of what I would think, what a shop in the 63, 64 with all the bodies in various different shades, shapes of disrepair, but a lot of really full cars. I mean, you've got a lot of raw material there.
Yeah, I mean, I build 15 cars a year, like full builds. They range from $500,000 to $700,000 is the build.
15 cars.
And we build 15 cars a year.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
How
I've got
many people do you have working for you?
20.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Because right now, I'm having a coronary going. 15 cars
So
a year,
yeah,
my ass.
so our cars range from 500 to 700 is kind of the range.
And did you have like a 3-year waiting list?
I do right now. Yeah, 3.5 year waiting list. So when you go in the shop, those shelves of all the bodies, that's kind of like the it's kind of like the bench in the doctor's office. They just got to sit there and wait until their turn's up. But in the workshop, my wife and daughter run the office. The rest of us are all in the shop. I'm kind of planted right in the center. Kind of everybody's around me, so that I do all the creative direction.
And you make the cuts. If I remember correctly, anything that gets cut, you're engaged in that actual process of saying, okay, this is where.
Yeah, I've got a couple guys that disassemble the cars. Once it's disassembled, media blasted, then I do the kind of initial configuration. Right, I'll cut the roof off. I'll lean the windshield back. I'll lean the nose back.
Overall shape of the project and program.
Yeah, that way everybody has the same vision.
I understand.
And then from there, I've got 6 guys that are just metal shaping, that are doing just the raw metal work. We've got 2 big Yoders, we've got 4 English wheels, we've got Polmaxes and Eckelds and all the old school equipment.
Where were those from? You mentioned that they came from someplace. You and Leno got the lion's share.
Nethercut.
Nethercut.
When the Nethercut.
Really?
Yeah. So
when
I mean, I was more of an English wheel guy before I got the big power hammers. But my first 2 pieces of equipment I got 25 years ago: a Polmax and a Liebert shear. And with those 2 pieces, you can pretty much do anything, because a Polmax is like a reciprocating hammer.
Okay.
You can build different dies. You can do anything, but it's not real efficient for doing big panel work. And then I learned how to use an English wheel. And but once we were introduced to power hammers, that kind of changed the game, because now you can build hoods and roof panels and big fenders. So there's 6 guys in the shop that are doing the main kind of metal shaping, that are doing we do all the rust repair, because these cars are super rusty. Mm-hmm. So we got 2 months in just rust repair on each car.
Sure.
And then we've got 2 months of like fabrication and custom work.
All the alterations. Is paint in-house also?
So all of our body work is, but we don't paint in LA County. We paint out in the desert.
I bet you do.
Yeah. So, because I want to use the good stuff.
Yeah, and you don't want the EPA is pretty much Satan.
Yeah. So we.
Is that what you do that too, right?
I don't do anything. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
So
I'm not LA County.
No, you're not LA County,
so there's
either place.
So there's 6 guys that are doing metal shaping, and and then I've got a couple that are prototyping parts or building oil lines, oil tanks, machining stuff. A couple guys doing the body work. So after the metal work's done, we prep the body, seal them, block them, and then I ship them out to my painter, who just does my stuff. I got him and a helper, and so they always have 3 cars on rotation. So I drop one off.
I bet they do, man.
Pick one up, and it's just so every 3 weeks I get a car back.
At least your cars are small.
Yeah.
You got that going for you.
They're small.
I'd like to see you do that with 59 Cadillacs.
Yeah,
I'd like
my
to
shop
see
would
you
have
do
to be
50
twice as big.
Yes.
Well, because you use rotisseries, picking up from the front and rear. You can't do that on a 356 because they're always whacked in the front and the rear. So we make kind of an octagon cage that we roll the cars in. But
it's pretty cool. It actually just kind of like rolls over because pretty fun.
So and then on the other side of the curtain is where we do all the assembly. So after it's painted, then we do all the undercoating. So we use like lizard skin, sound deadening, and then do all the kind of stick-on sound deadening on the inside. We do all the interior in-house. So all of our trim shop, I've got 2 guys that are doing all the trim work. And then there's 6 guys that are just assembling cars. And so we've got 2 lifts, as you recall. And basically by the time the interior's done, suspension's already hung on the cars, then it goes on the lift. And it's usually on the lift for 3 weeks. And then I take it out. My wife and I take it out and drive it. She's the best at finding the squeaks and the rattles and all the little inconsistencies in the cars. And then kind of the final drive is with my son Zane, and he and I go up and do photos with an amazing photographer, Drew Phillips, on every car. So we go up, photo shoot the cars, and usually deliver them with about 250 miles. Mm-hmm. And they go, now they're going everywhere. I mean, in the shop right now, I got one going to Indonesia. We just converted one to right-hand drive for New Zealand, one going to the UK, 5 or 6, U.S. cars, one going to Mexico, just delivered 2 to Puerto Rico. So they kind of go all over the place now.
Cool.
Yeah, but just super focused on just the 356.
Yeah.
Understood.
Right. That's your specialty.
Yeah.
Well, it's Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yeah. There you go.
You do one thing and you do one thing awesome.
Yeah.
But you do it awesome. I am
Thank you.
aware. I'm well aware of you, and it's interesting because my introduction to you obviously was through the media, and like I said, my take on it, whether it was accurate or not, was watching this company and you come into what I personally deemed a rather stuffy community.
Yeah.
And kind of just go, well, I brought that.
Yeah.
And it was first, and my guess was pretty close to what you were saying. At first, they're like, either
what the hell?
What the hell is that? Or I don't even like it anyway. And it's turned around to, oh, can I please have one?
Yeah.
And that is the best revenge, is that the supposed person who is all down on it is now paying to have one, which makes me smile, even though it's not even my shop. It makes me really happy.
But as you know, it's like the 20 years leading up to that point was when all the work was done.
That's right.
And so
social media,
media,
like, all of a sudden now you think I'm great?
Right. Well, social media was, is great, but it's also, it just changes everything. Up until 2005, kind of Facebook, and a little bit of like Instagram, say 2012 or whenever that came out, kind of that period of time is when a lot of people outside of the Porsche world were discovering our stuff. But prior to that,
Right.
the hot rod builders had no idea that there was a Porsche guy that was the grandson of one of the original Hall of Fame hot rod builders, right? Because it's just different worlds. Sure. I mean, the only time I would see one of your cars, is at back then, not even SEMA, because I wasn't going to SEMA,
Grand
but
National or some local.
Exactly. I mean, I was always going to the roadster shows, but I'd see the hot rod stuff, but I didn't know the players, right?
And a great example of that is I as I said earlier, I like Volksy.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know Buddy Hale.
No.
So he brought a car. There's the Grand National Roadster Show, and under the roof of that show, there's the big main award, which is America's Most Beautiful Roadster. There's another award called the El Slonaker Design Award, and Bob Florine wanted to rekindle that. It's an old award. It went back to the 50s under Amber's roof.
Very cool. Sure.
And we wanted to basically, I'll just get myself in trouble like normal. We wanted to kick the Riddler's ass with it.
Yeah.
And we did. So this award is open to everything and anything. Right. It's not pre-1948 Roadster. So if you want to bring a freaking 72 Datsun mini truck,
Yep.
now it's got to pass scrutiny to be picked, hand-picked of one of the 12 allowed to go for the award.
Right.
Buddy is a amazing Volkswagen builder out of Arizona.
Yeah.
And he brought a Bug to the Slonaker Award. Now remember, most of the room, the other 11 cars are 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s.
He
either
just
hot
killed it.
rods or muscle cars that are, again, to be picked to go for that award, you're already at a lunatic level of detail. It was Buddy and Troy Ladd from Hollywood Hot Rods. Troy had an unbelievable coupe that was done in a kind of like a root beer, and it was all neat English race car parts on it and 3 million rivets in the car. But Buddy's Bug was frighteningly good.
That's
and
awesome.
The coolest thing about that was our Slonaker building is what's called Building 6. Building 4 is the main building where the trophies are for Amber, and I've got a booth for my shop in Building 4. And when I would, as a judge, it was interesting. I'm going over to my booth in 4, hanging out, and I reflected on it since, because it was last year, and had other conversations with people going, that Bug was being talked about over in Building 4, which is where Rad Rides, where all the, where Pinky's Hot Rod shop, where Bobby Alloway's shop is. In fact, Bobby Alloway's a super, super top level builder who's a judge for Amber. And we were walking around another building. I ran into him and he goes, you boys, you muscle car boys better hope, or all of us better hope that boy doesn't start building hot rods. He was talking about Buddy's Volkswagen. So nicely done. But what I love, and why I'm bringing this back around to you, is in our community, the muscle car, nobody knew who this kid was.
Right.
Volkswagens, yeah. Oh, yeah, you get an eyeful of that car, it's like, holy crap, this thing's badass, right?
bet.
So I loved him for that. And he came in so humble. He's like, can you even hear me? I haven't even been talking into the damn microphone.
That's right.
But everybody was
We'll take it that he can.
gushing on him. And he was like, oh, I can't even believe we're in this building, and it's such an honor to be, and he's coming gunning, not this year. Next year, he's bringing a Cabriolet. And I'm like,
Awesome.
you bring it, because I want another Volksy in there. So this is a long sales pitch of, you should bring one of these things into Sloaner. It's fun being a judge, though, because I've got, last year was George's, Andy Leach built George that 61 Buick. And this car, off the chart, unbelievable talent. But in the same room, I'm judging a 32 Ford that's unbelievable. And I'm judging a fill in the blank. And they're all done to a certain level.
Yeah.
And so it makes it interesting because you're not trying to figure out which 32 Ford Roadster was the best one.
Right. Oh yeah.
It's and I love that eclectic mix. I love judging this class because everything's at a super high level, but yet that's nothing like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Totally
you have to adopt a very open-minded judging thing of like for me, I look at. We do, as judges for this, we also look at aesthetic. We're not worried about ISCA points. I don't want your 6 million modifications for points if it's tacky and ugly and disproportionate.
Yep.
So you're not coming in with 1 million awesomely executed modifications, and if it's gaudy, sorry.
Yep.
But I go under workload, first design element, workload. How much work did it take to make the bare thing? And then execution and completion of that workload.
Yeah.
So something like this would be a bucket of fun.
Yeah.
Because there's so much done to it. But again, as I complimented in the beginning, somebody who doesn't know Porsches would go, oh, that's a cool old Porsche race car kind of thing.
Yeah.
They don't know that you manipulated everything. And that's the key. The taste of manipulating so well that it came that way, right?
Well, something my grandfather kind of always taught me is modify everything, but make everything look as if it wasn't modified.
Amen.
And that's the
a great way
foundation
to
of
go.
kind of what I do. So yeah, I mean that was the way he did everything. If you look at all of his early custom cars, you look at the Polynesian, you look at the Ron
Again,
Dunn,
you designed the ugly out of it.
the Ron Dunn 50. That's a section 50 shoebox car. You know, they all look like you look at them and it's like, oh, it's so natural looking, but every inch of it has been modified.
Yep.
And that's what I said in the beginning. I wish the 356s looked like this in the beginning. Of course, it would give you no job, but at the same time, maybe you just do them all. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think it's pretty amazing.
Now I'll join you guys there one year. There's a car that I've been building that
What you should do-
that you'll enjoy, but it's probably 2 or 3 years out.
That's fine. What you should do is
I'm not even 50 yet, so I still
the
got
Grand
plenty of time.
National Roadster Show happens the first weekend of February every year here in
Yep.
Pomona.
Yeah.
So come out.
Yeah.
Just
Oh,
come to the
I'm there
show.
every year.
Are you
Good.
there every
Come
year?
over.
Okay.
Come over to the 6 and find me because I'll be walking around
Yeah.
judging, and it'll be interesting to watch you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
No,
yeah.
I'm there every year. You know,
Good.
my dad comes down from Oregon, and we
Cool, good.
we go
Nice.
and kind of root around. My dad will be 80 years old in
Nice.
a couple of weeks, doing a little Baja Bug trip. My dad built the first Baja Bug, so I don't know if you kind of know that little history, but
crazy?
back in the 60s, he was working at Chick Iverson Volkswagen Porsche.
So this is before the Manx stuff.
Well, so the Myers Manx was already being built, and Bruce was, building, his fiberglass bodied cars, and that was in Orange County. But my father worked at Chick Iverson Volkswagen Porsche, and somebody had come in with it was actually one of the Jim Chamberlain that worked for Manx, but he had a 57 oval window ragtop Bug that the rear was smashed and the front was smashed, and my dad traded him for a motorcycle. So they rolled it into the body shop, and my grandfather he put front fenders on the rear, because front VW fenders are wider. So he put front fenders on the rear, flopped them around, rolled the edges, cut the rear right below the louvers, rolled the edge of the hood, and put a reduction gearbox in it, cranked up the torsion bars, put a set of Anson Sprint wheels on it, and that was the first Baja Bug.
Wow.
So it was at
That's cool.
on the cover of every magazine, right? So what happened was one of my dad's good friends was a guy named Drino Miller. Drino, kind of a legend in the automotive space, but he was the fiberglass guy for Myers Manx. Well, my dad wasn't going to build a kit, so Drino built the Miller Havens Baja Bug kits based off of that in like 67, 68.
Wow.
But that Baja Bug trend all began
big.
From
Big time.
the car
that car.
my father built. And so we're doing a little Baja Bug reunion
Nice.
coming up in a couple weeks for his 80th birthday out at Akatia Wells. So
Wow, how fun is that?
yeah.
Cool.
Well, I got to tell you, this has been very fun.
Yeah, thanks for
Lots of
joining us.
stuff.
Oh, my
thanks
pleasure.
for sharing the history.
Yeah,
Of the
it's my pleasure.
Absolutely. And we'd love to have you back on again at some point, but we'll see you out at the Grand National Roadster Show.
Yeah, and
for
I'm
next
hoping to
week.
see an
definitely.
entry
I'll
in
be
a
there.
couple of years. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
But,
you'll enjoy it.
that's right.
Oh, I'm sure he will.
Your Emory Motorsports, emerymotorsports.com.
Yep.
You can go see what he's doing. It's very, very cool. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in. It's Car Guy Confessions with Jeff Smith. Maybe he'll be back next time.
And
We'll see.
ARP,
Yes. ARPbolts.com.
no, ARP-bolts.com.
Petersen Museum. I got that right.
Yeah,
are
we
at the
are
Petersen
here at the Petersen Museum,
Come-
which has a lovely Porsche exhibit if you happen to
Yes,
Absolutely.
Come see Rod's
featuring
car.
his
Yes.
baby carriage.
Absolutely. It's right in the back seat.
That's right.
Very good.
That's right.
Well, thank you again, Rod. Appreciate
Got
it.
it.
See y'all.
Yeah.